Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and I'm about to get working on this bin over here, and I thought I had worm bins down here. I don't remember planting anything. Yeah, you can see there's something has kind of decided to make itself at home growing down in here, and even started popping a tent out of this plastic covering here too. When we last checked in on this system 10 days ago, it was 180 days old, getting its 18th feeding overall. And 10 days later, on its 190-day birthday, it's getting its 19th feeding. And 19 feedings, that's getting pretty up there, especially for me and my systems. And even approaching 200 days is pretty astounding for me too. I think this might be the only system where I've got springtails. All I had to do was peel back a little bit of the castings here, and I'm sure you see it too. It's probably more accurate to say that this is the only system where I see springtail populations booming, like I don't see anywhere else, because I'm sure I've got springtails everywhere. It's probably just here that we see them kind of, I don't know, maybe reacting to what might be a little bit too much moisture? It's hard to say. And it wouldn't be the place that you would expect that either, because the bag here has always been, not always, but for a while there, we found that, like, I think it was these two sides here that laid up pretty good against the plastic, preventing airflow and helping keep moisture in pretty good, but it was over here on these other sides where more air was able to sneak in and cause the material out on these edges to be a little bit more dry, but that's something we have not seen for some time now. This bin is getting to that mostly castings stage at this point, where there's all kinds of little bits of this and that to be found all over the place in the concentrations that you see of the castings. Castings certainly outnumber anything else in here by a large degree. So before I disrupt everything here in the system, I was just kind of curious, especially in the areas where I'm used to seeing dryness. I was just wanting to see more of the outer edges of the system, but I think we've already confirmed that dryness is no longer an issue in this system. We've known that for some time now. We've persisted in covering with plastic, and perhaps that's the only thing we need to change is perhaps letting the system get a little bit more airflow. Let it get a little bit drier, and then maybe the numbers of springtails will back off a little bit and become less than what we have here, because I'm sure they're helping and everything like that, but it's a it's a worm bin. It's not a springtail bin. I prefer to have mainly worms in here when I open the thing up, not something else staring me in the face. So these are the mixed worms. These are supposed to be European night crawlers, of which I think there's probably only a few, but probably mostly red wigglers and Indian blue worms. Whenever I go through this population, once in a while I bump into one really big fat worm, which I have to assume is European nightcrawler. But then I see really a big dominant, I don't know, it's to me it seems like the blue worms seem to take over. And I think they're real quick, reproducers and everything like that. So, I don't know. I'm pretty sure a lot of these that we're seeing are red wigglers, because the ones where you can, clearly see the clitellum is going to be your red wiggler. The one where the clitellum is virtually invisible and just blends right into the body is the Indian blue worm. That might be a red wiggler too. So who knows? I always kind of felt like the Indian blue worms are the ones predominantly taking over the majority of the population in here, but it could actually be the red wigglers. So we fed the same thing we fed the previous time. So 10 days ago was the same thing it was fed 10 days prior, which was kind of boring foods. We put coffee down the middle, sprinkled in with some worm chow, and that was it. So when we came in here last time, we found a whole bunch of that commingled worm chow slash coffee mix as leftovers. And I had this feeling like that's exactly what we're going to see in here once again, since virtually nothing is different. It's the same bin, it's the same feeding, and we're coming back to it in the same interval 10 days later. But it's so different, because last time we were just crumbling up handfuls of coffee mixed with worm chow. And here it just seems like I'm finding none of it. None at all. So like, it seems like maybe they just kind of got the hang of eating that stuff, and then when I went in with the second portion last time, maybe they just knew exactly what to do with the stuff, and they've gobbled it all up, from what I could tell. Huh. Certainly not what I was expecting to see down here. That's always fun. I think that's one of the fun things about the worm farming thing, because, you know, on average, depends on how many systems you have and stuff like that, but for me, on average, I have something that happens once or twice a week at least that was just completely unexpected and a little bit of a twist, and definitely keeps you on your toes and keeps things interesting. So we've pretty much examined everything. We might as well just keep going at this point. Not that I'm expecting to see anything different out here on this further end, but the stuff is also nice. I figure let me just continue enjoying it and admiring it. There's they must have really just done away with that food pretty quickly too and dispersed, because I saw no particular concentration of worms down the middle where that last feeding was placed. It seems like there's just as many worms out here on this edge as there were down the middle, as there were on the opposite edge. The worms are just all over the place in here. I promised myself I would not give them coffee and worm chow today. I thought I would try to give them something a little different, try to provide them with some variety, just to break the pattern. Besides that, I don't even have any coffee. I already fed the last one to a worm bin that I had, so and my worm chow is running low too. So even if I wanted to feed coffee and worm chow, I think we could pull it off with the worm chow, but the coffee I just don't have any right now. So the food they're going to get today, geez, my mind's racing. I have a few ideas and I don't even know which way it's going to go. So either way, whatever we're feeding them is not here now, because I have to go to the freezer to go get the food that we're going to give them. Although I'm having a little bit of a brainstorm here. Let me think for a second on what they're going to feed, and we'll resume this momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a special way of providing them with a variety of assorted nuts. So I took this stuff that was provided by a buddy of mine as a donation to our wormery, and I rinsed it all free of salt. And after letting it dry a little bit, I went ahead and I chopped up each of these 5 types of different nuts. I believe it's cashews, almonds, what is that thing? I don't even know. I think that's a Brazil nut. I think that's a pecan. This thing, well, I'm sure its name will come to me over time. So I did something pretty similar to how we tested all the different seeds and grains that I wanted to make my worm chow out of. I took a thin piece of paper, and all around it I created little tiny holes everywhere. Everywhere, tiny, tiny holes. So if a worm wants to get through this thing, they certainly can. So this was going to become our little test platform onto which we can place our different types of nuts to be eaten. But before we do that, I'd like to use this as sort of a medium for our application of the BTI. This is that mosquito dunks solution. Besides being useful for controlling mosquitoes, it supposedly also works on gnats, and I believe gnats are the type of insect that's sort of plaguing my wormery lately. Alright, I ended up putting in probably a little bit more moisture than was necessary. I was hoping to just put in a damp piece of paper on top and not apply so much moisture to this material, because this material certainly doesn't need any more moisture. Even when the thing was popped up like a tent with those little plants growing, all that air was getting in, and it still stayed nice and damp. So this material, I don't know, maybe we'll be putting the plastic back on, but when we do, I think we're going to do so in a way that, you know, allows for a little bit more airflow. Is it macadamia nuts, the round ones? I think it is. So here, we'll just sort of spread them out evenly, and we'll put the full unchopped representation of each right on top, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think these are macadamia nuts, right? And there's stuff in here that's no more than just like shattered bits, all the way down to pretty small pieces. I went in there, you know, I took my little knife and I did the trick where you just kind of leave the tip on the board and you just go back and forth like that, seesawing it on its tip and running the material underneath it. I know that I put at least 2 holes in my gloves, so I know these gloves are trashed now that I was cutting stuff with them. I know that I put at least 2 holes in them. I know there was even a hole in one of the fingers before we even started. So I think 3 holes is going to be my limit for using used gloves before replacing them. So I don't know if we're giving one you know, an advantage over the others by being smack in the middle versus ones that are out here on the outskirts. I'm not really doing this very scientifically. It's very very unscientific, if you will. And you know, I went into the forums, or well, into the discussion forum or the community page of my YouTube channel to post the question about nuts, because I've never tried feeding any sort of nuts to my worms, and I appreciate everyone's feedback, letting me know that it's okay. I just didn't drill down into the level of detail that I really should have, which is to ask whether or not they're going to do anything with these full nuts or not, or is it only the tiny bits that I should expect to see them eating? I don't know. And I wonder what they're going to think about these interesting little plants, whether this is something that they could nibble on too. I'm sure if this stuff was down in the bedding, they could probably nibble on it pretty easily. But I think we'll just lay it out here as decoration. Oh, brother. Yeah, I spent a good amount of time prepping this piece of paper and prepping all these chopped up nuts and rinsing everything off and all that other fun stuff. So I think I'm done. I don't really have much more to add to this little creative feeding here for our mixed population of worms living here in the VermiBag tote. I'm kind of getting an unusual feeding, really more to tell me a little bit more about what they like, what they don't like. My feeling is that they will eat everything, but sometimes I just want to see what they'll eat first and what they'll leave for last. At least it gives me a sense of which of the foods I'm giving them they prefer the best. Alright, so let's do what I mentioned earlier, which is provide the outer edges of the bin a little bit more opportunity to air out and dry off. The BTI is in, but even as of last week we had held off on applying any of the diatomaceous earth out onto the plastic surface, but I'm having a little bit of a change of heart and I'd really like to, you know, see an end to this little gnat infestation situation that I've got going on here. So I'm going to start reinstituting the diatomaceous earth, sprinkling out onto the top plastic as I get back into my systems to feed. Each system as it comes up for rotation for food, I think is going to also, besides getting the BTI mosquito dunks treatment, liquid administered to the bedding and down into the system, I'm going to be putting this diatomaceous earth back out here for further insect control measures. Hopefully we start seeing some success with that soon. Alright everyone, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.